And it might be true that for a military, the military kind of leadership is good. But where you need your people thinking with you, the other kind of leadership model is good. And the IT industry quickly saw this, and they also developed a university model of leadership rather than a military model of leadership. And most modern businesses benefit from the inclusive kind of leadership, leading from behind. Now, my mother and her family were very egalitarian. They were also involved in the independence movement. My grandmother used to go around boycotting British goods. My grandmother went to college when there were 8 girls in the college. In fact, their common room was as big as the boys' common room, and my grandmother used to tell me she used to play rounders in the girls' common room because there were only 8 girls. So they were very egalitarian, and I was, as a child and throughout my life, non-aggressive. Once, when I was in St. Xavier's College, they did a personality test on me. And the father, who was the counselor, called me in. He was very worried. He says, "You scored 0 on aggression. How will you survive?" Maybe I was fortunate that because of my family background and I was fairly intelligent, so people couldn't fool me easily. So I got by without being aggressive. I remember I went to IIT, and IIT was known for ragging in those days. But when I entered IIT, they had a very nice principle. They said they decided that they would ask the people questions. If they answered the questions, no ragging. So again, in spite of 0 aggression, I got by. So it may be that I like this kind of leadership because that is my nature, but I can assure you it works out very well.
Of course, it has. I mean, from Godrej Agrovet just being one agricultural-oriented or chemical business to actually creating a life sciences, entering into that shows your vision, shows your, power to create things, and definitely you stand by to say that aggression is not the only way to get things done. That leads me to the next topic on, so how do you actually balance your core values with, but businesses are aggressive growth, and how do you balance these core values driving aggressive growth, profitability in competitive markets?
I don't think it's a contradiction.
Okay.
Because innovation is one thing based on which we have been growing, and many of the new businesses we went into was because we did some innovation, or we watched somebody else's innovation and tried to replicate it. And we went into agribusiness quite by accident. Larsen and Toubro had collaborated with Bühler, hoping to build an animal feed industry in India. And they built a prototype, and then nobody wanted to buy the animal feed plant, so Bühler went back to Switzerland, and Larsen and Toubro were stuck with this plant, and they looked for a discount buyer, and my brother was the person who bought this business. And I'm a chemical engineer, but I was very fortunate that at MIT, when I was studying chemical engineering, one of my professors told me to read Double Helix, the book about DNA. And I took courses in biochemistry. And then when I came back here, and I decided to get involved in the animal feed business. And although I'm a chemical engineer, I got to know a lot of biosciences. And it helped me as more and more biology became more and more important over the years. So I'm very glad that I had a grounding in biology. And I was always interested in learning about everything. And that I owe to my father. He used to take 45 minutes to shave. And whenever he was shaving, I would go into the bathroom and talk to him. And I learned lots of things, including linguistics. He was very interested in linguistics. He was a fluent German speaker. He studied in Nazi Germany. So he also warned me about far-right thinking. And I'm really glad I got that lesson early on, Because sad to say, we are seeing this all over the world today. And this could be a big danger for all of us. We have to be on the guard against this. He lived through the first time all of this happened. And he also taught me German, and he also taught me how to pronounce French, how to pronounce Italian. When I was 12 years old, I visited my uncle who was working for Air India in Italy. It was my first trip abroad. One day I was on my first jet plane and my first escalator. It was quite an experience, and I was very glad that I could speak a little bit of Italian. Later on, I learned French, and he was interested in all kinds of subjects: politics, geography, history, free enterprise. We were a very socialist country in those days. So when I was at MIT, I also studied psychology, economics, French, acting.
Wow.
So I think it's very good to have a broad education, and it's very good to have diversity for the same reason. Different thoughts help you make good decisions. And if you have a broad education, you can talk to people from other disciplines. They are probably the experts in their discipline, but at least you can have a dialogue with them.
Amazing. So it actually intrigues me. You emphasized on innovation a lot. Innovation has its own challenges as well, because not all innovations lead to success stories. So how does actually, as a leader, you decide on innovation, and any specific areas where it didn't work out and it had to, one has to, what's the advice you would give to the room that yes, balancing success and failure as part of innovation?
Right. We had very little innovation that didn't work out. Once we tried to start a tea business, and that didn't succeed. But I can't remember too many incidents where it didn't. And I think India needs to do much more big innovation, original things. Often we did was ideas from somewhere else, just see if we could also replicate it. That kind of innovation rarely leads to failure. But it's not enough, especially today, because we've already exhausted that model of innovation. We need to spend much more on R&D. The returns on R&D are very good. Of course, if you have in something like pharmaceuticals, where it takes years to develop a new product and then years to get approval, it can be risky. But small innovations pay for themselves wonderfully. And any problems you have, it's best to find an innovative solution, either look outside or develop it inside. And the returns on innovation are great, and that helps to keep the company young. And I was always fascinated with that. Being a chemical engineer, I didn't work very much as a chemical engineer, but a lot as a chemist and a biologist.
Thank you so much for that answer. So you also spoke about diversity in that sense. So diversity in terms of not just in terms of gender, in terms of even the diversity of your products, diversity right from soap and locks and keys to life sciences. So what is it that differentiator that actually has helped Godrej to sustain through this entire phase and actually lead for the last 127 years? Most family owned businesses have this challenge of delegating and including professionals. So there is a conflict which happens. How do you actually manage that conflict is there any framework you adapt to, or is there any certain ideas that you have agreed that this is how we would want to take it forward?
I think 2 points here. Although we were a family business from early times, we had a lot of professionals. And we also made sure that family members were professionals. My father was a PhD in industrial engineering. My brother studied industrial engineering and a degree in business administration from MIT, and he did it all by the time he was 21. I was almost a perpetual student, and it took me, I was 26 by the time I reached that stage, and I might have continued as a professor, but the emergency was on, and he asked me to come back and help him. So because we were professionals, we were confident hiring professionals, and we knew how to deal with professionals, and we were often CEOs, but later on we often played the role of a super CEO. There was a CEO doing most of the work, and we could look long term. I would often focus on R&D. Some of our CEOs didn't have a scientific background, like Balram Yadav in Agrovet, so he asked me to look into the R&D. He looked after the business beautifully. He looked after government relations beautifully. So there was this kind of constant collaboration. And if you try to order around CEOs, family members try to order around CEOs, it doesn't work. But if the two of you have a good working relationship and you listen to each other, you can always find a sensible compromise. That compromise idea is probably better than either his idea or your idea. So that is the way, and you need to be a little bit of a professional to be able to deal with a professional. But once you have that, I think it's quite easy for family members to deal with professionals, and it makes sense for the family member to have more of the long-term vision and the professional to do more of the day-to-day business.
Super. So, looking ahead, I mean, last couple of questions before I throw it out to the audience to ask their questions. They are all very eagerly waiting to get the chance. We had your group would have seen multiple revolutions in the whole phase. I mean, I was just talking to someone that probably there was an era when electricity was a new game changer for people. Having discovered that, and from there today we are reaching a space where AI is the next big disruptor or enabler, whichever way one has to think. So, what is the one, what are the emerging trends or technologies do you foresee that will have significant impact on the industry that Godrej operates in, and what is it that you would advise